Welcome to WholeCEO with Lisa G. I'm the best-selling author of The Boss Weight Loss. I'm bringing you the top tips to be unstoppable. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually pull up a chair with today's top experts in mindset, weight loss, business, and more. Learn our top tips so that you can have more energy, be fit and resilient, feel unstoppable, unshakable, and unbreakable. In the past decade, he's written a book on SEO, written for Forbes, spoken at conferences, been featured in BuzzFeed, Inc., Shark Tank, and Business Weekly, and he's optimized websites for the NBA and other big businesses. Welcome to the podcast, Damon Burton.
Hey, Lisa, I appreciate the opportunity to chat.
I am so excited to have you here. I've been following your content on LinkedIn, and you are so spot on. So I wanted to talk to you on your topic of excellence here, SEO. So how can we build $1 million business without even advertising? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of, I don't want to say accidentally, but learned as I've went and done the same kind of thing. So we can talk about, as you mentioned, SEO, and we can also talk about how you and I kind of met through social media. So those are the two primary areas. So, why don't we start there with SEO? So if you're not familiar with what SEO is, it stands for search engine optimization. So the goal is to show up higher on search engines for words that you can monetize, but without paying for ads. And a lot of the strategies that we can talk about today have a dual purpose that you can actually leverage in social media too. So why don't we kind of start with the basics of SEO, and then we'll get into content, and then that's where the content kind of becomes dual purpose and goes into social media. How about that?
Go for it.
All right. So when we start talking about SEO, there's a little bit of a nerdy side to it. So let's kind of get that out of the way. The first thing you have to do before you get to content is you have to make sure your website's user friendly. So what does that mean? It has to load quickly. It has to be mobile friendly. So make sure you have a design that looks nice and is presentable. A little side comment on the design. Don't overcomplicate it. I've seen the most simplistic, minimalistic designs consistently outperform the most visually stunning designs. So don't overcomplicate the design. Actually, keep it simple where you can. I'll give you a free tool you can use. There's a website called GT Metrics, METRIX. It'll tell you all the great things about your website and all the things that you can improve on. I really like that website because it tells you very literally why your website loads quickly or slowly. Now, the reason why your website speed...
GT metrics, guys. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
The reason why that matters is because a really simple way to understand how to show up higher on search engines is who makes Google look good. So none of us like a slow website, so neither does Google. So if your website loads quicker than the competition, then that's a vote in your favor. All right, so we'll kind of skip the rest of the nerdy stuff. We'll give you just that crash course on there. Now let's imagine we have an efficient design now. And so now it comes to content. So everybody listening, or all the business owners, are passionate about something, or if you run a website or a business, you have a product that's better than the competition. So if you don't have a product that's better than the competition, or you're not passionate about what you offer, then why are you in that business?
Right.
So take one of those two things, which is either the benefits of your product or the passion behind your product, and showcase that. So just like you and I kind of met through LinkedIn, the kind of group that we run in and support each other is everybody's passionate about something. And so that's how you learned the I do SEO. And then that's why we're talking today about that, is because I put that out there. So put out there the things that you're passionate about, and here's where you start to monetize that. So when I started monetizing social media, I had actually turned it off. So about 2-3 years ago, I just shut down everything. And it was between LinkedIn and Facebook. And my wife was amazing because I had we all know that if you turn off Facebook, it doesn't really go away. And so what I had my wife do is she was kind enough to log in and delete every message I had ever sent anybody, delete every post I'd ever made, unfriended everybody, deleted every comment, and just wiped it out.
Wow.
So then what happened is I realized, well, now I can't contact that one person, and now I can't reach out to that other person. And so I thought, if I'm going to turn it back on, why don't I do social media my way? And what I meant by that is, how do I talk about business and entrepreneurship without boring friends and family? How do I talk about friends and family without boring the entrepreneurial audience? And I finally just said, I don't care, because both of those things are me. And
Right.
so when you start talking about the things that you're passionate about, you attract your tribe over time. So here's where that starts to turn into dollars. After about 3 months of going, okay, I'm going to just talk about the things that are things I like to talk about, I started realizing I was getting leads from it. And then at about the 9 month mark, I quantified it. And so I went back and said, okay, I've got this contract and this contract from these messages. And it ended up being about 150 grand in about 9 months. So
Awesome.
then, since then, it's probably been, I'd guess, 1.5 billion bucks in the last 2.5, 3 years. And
Wait, say that
so,
again.
about 1.5 billion in the last 2 to 3 years.
That is amazing. I just had you to wanted you to drop that bomb on our audience and repeat it.
Yeah, and here's the fun part of it is, we all get sick of these private messages of pitching people and things like that. And so I don't do that because it just didn't,
Wow.
when I talked about, I'm going to do social media my way, and I don't know what that means, but I'll figure it out. That was one of those things that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to constantly pitch in the private messages. And so here's how you monetize it and you can do it without feeling gross is when I connect with somebody, I engage with them and I tell them a little bit about myself, and then I prompt them and I say, tell me about you. If they don't reply, I don't follow up. I leave it. But because my goal is not to pitch in the private messages, it's to expose them to my content. So now once you've connected with somebody, it increases the visibility of your content to that contact. And so that's where you shine by showing your personality and your passion behind things. And over time, people start to go, okay, Lisa offers this, Damon offers that. And when I need that thing, those are the go-to people that I go to because through your personality, they begin to trust you. And so when things convert is people will follow for whatever business advice or entrepreneur advice or whatever your area of expertise is, but they will convert on your personal stories. And so they message me and they say, hey, I know you do SEO. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that was really cool what you said about your wife, or that was really cool about what you did with your kids. And they'll convert on the human element. So that's why you want to showcase your passion behind things, both from a professional position, but also sprinkle in your personal life and why you're passionate and how the two integrate your personal life and your business life.
So I guess obviously not all content is created equal, but content is king, or in my case, queen. So how many posts, let's just say, for example, if you're posting 5 days a week and you want to put it out there, what you're passionate about, your family and your business, would you say like 3 business related and 2 family a week if you had to put it in a formula or something?
It's probably pretty close to that. It also depends on what platform you're on. So with LinkedIn, mine's probably 50-50, 50
Okay.
business, 50 personal. But
Yeah.
then on other platforms like Facebook, it's probably 70-30, 70 family, 30 business.
Yeah.
It just depends on A, which platform, and B, your type of audience on that platform. So for example, where I get the most visibility. So here's a catch 22. I get more views on Instagram. I get zero leads from Instagram. And so don't focus on the vanity metrics.
Yeah.
So, I get, if I had to put it in sequence of where I get views versus leads, is I probably get the most views on Instagram, the second most on LinkedIn, and then third is Facebook. But I get the most leads off Facebook. And I get a middle amount from LinkedIn. And then also a lot of people will connect with me on LinkedIn. And then when they start to engage with you and follow your personality, and if you pique their interest on your journey and your life stories, then they go look for you on other channels too. So a lot of the people that I end up engaging with or becoming leads on Facebook originated on LinkedIn, and they'll follow you over to the platform of their choice.
That's so interesting because a lot of people will give you such different advice on social media. They'll say, well, you should focus on your one thing and post there all the time. But I find that what you're saying is true. You have to be relevant on all the channels and focus your energy on where you can do the research and see that you're making money. Is that correct?
A little bit of both. I do that. There is some value in sticking to one platform until you kind of figure out what works for you. And so
Yeah.
I was largely only on LinkedIn so I was on Facebook and LinkedIn, but when I mentioned a couple of years ago, I turned it off. I had a hard line on Facebook, and so it was all personal. And so if I had a client add me or somebody message me a business question, I would just ignore it. And I wanted to kind of protect that space and keep it for that intent. And then when I fired it all back up, I was like, okay, Damon is Damon. Let's just kind of blend it all together. And then I started being way more intentional on LinkedIn. So if you're not familiar with the history of LinkedIn, it used to just be a resume platform. And so I had a LinkedIn profile forever, probably 20 years. And then it was only about 3 years ago where I said, okay, I'm going to start using this as a social media platform now. So I was more personally present on Facebook, but I focused my intentionality on how can I leverage a platform on LinkedIn. And then once I figured that out and what worked there, then I kind of blended Facebook and LinkedIn together. So a lot of my content you'll see cross-posted between the two.
Yeah.
And only about 2, 3 years after I felt comfortable with that, did me and my team really start engaging on Instagram, because you can dilute your focus and then you can get mixed up on what works over here and assume it works over there, and it doesn't. It's dramatically different on Instagram versus LinkedIn versus Facebook. So get one of them working, and then yes, there is value in omnipresence after that.
Well, that makes so much more sense to focus on the one till you monetize it and then realize that you need the omnipresence on like all of the things. So that being said, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how people can still dominate SEO with all the changing algorithms on Google. So how do we keep up with that kind of stuff and still crush it, making money in sales without advertising?
Yeah, great question. So let's tie that back to the content thing. So once you have a platform, a website that is user friendly, then it's largely the same concept of what we just talked about. Social media is showcasing your individuality, especially now when people start talking about these different algorithm changes and AI and this and that. So what's going to stand out? Here's what's going to happen is content's going to be produced at a rapid scale, exponentially faster than it has been before. But with that becomes a degradation of quality. And
Right.
so, as everybody else is mass producing content, you focus on quality over quantity. And that's always been the game with SEO. But now I'm really curious. It's almost like we're in the eye of the storm, where right now it's like, okay, how are things going to settle, and what's going to take off in good and bad ways? And I think we can all agree that quantity of content is going to take off. But I think too many people try to cut corners, and they go for the quantity over quality.
Yeah.
And I mean, purely from an SEO perspective, there's been content generating machines for years. I mean, this AI is not new from that perspective. There's been lots of tools that can scale content. This is just the best tool so far. And so things like this have been on Google's radar for a long time. In fact, there was an algorithm update way back in 2011 that focused on quality content over quantity. So when we talk about doing content at scale, and then we compare that to social media. So the value in social media is your unique voice and your unique personality. And it's the same thing because when on search engines, because everybody else is going out and vomiting this content at scale,
Yeah.
then if you take the time to articulate and stand out in, why Lisa is so special versus the competition, then
Yeah.
that's going to stand out. And we all see this content, and we can tell when it's AI, right? Something's just off. Like there's a little bit of roboticness to it, or even if it's not
Yeah.
robotic, there's just a disconnect in the personality where you're like, that doesn't sound like the normal Damon, right? And
Yeah.
so there are certainly ways to leverage content at scale, but I think those that are going to win and sustain an audience over time are going to be those that build a personal brand around it and focus on quality over quantity.
Well, I like AI, but I think it would be a huge mistake, and it's been in the media when people just copy it word for word. I think that there's a place for doing research, and then you have to make it your own. Otherwise, you're plagiarizing.
Exactly. Yeah, use it for ideation, use it for creativity, use it for thinking of, new things, use it for thinking of, what's on the tip of your tongue and you can't get it out. And then you put it in AI and you're like, oh, that's the topic or that's the path. And then from there, make it your own. Yeah. I mean, it's not that AI is bad by any means. It's cool. It's romantic. It's sexy. It's all these things.
Yeah, it's new, so it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. But figure out how to make it your own.
All right, so um, one last question for you. I started this podcast back in 2020 because the pandemic was hard for me, and I knew I had to make a pivot. So,
Hmm.
what is the last advice you want to leave our audience with about how they can be unstoppable in SEO with all the changing algorithms?
So it's going to sound kind of like a contradiction, but the best way to focus on SEO is to not focus on SEO, right? So, do the technical stuff, but I'm going to reinforce what we talked about. Content is make it your own. So even with my team of copywriters, when we're working on clients, I say, don't SEO the content, at least in the first draft, right? There's some little technical things you can do and how you structure content, but first focus on solving the problem. So when you're talking to your audience, whether it's on search engines or social media, is you have to understand who they are and understand their pain points. When you're writing content, focus on solving those problems and pain points and become the authority in who they trust, because then when they need your service, then they come to you. So, let's kind of blend a couple things. You talked about staying ahead of algorithms. You talked about COVID was hard. So in all those things, anytime we've had a major algorithm update or anytime we've had a recession. So I started my business in 2007. What happened in 2008, right?
I
Huge
know.
recession.
I was there.
Yeah. So in the 2008 recession, it was the first time I grew significantly. Now that's relative because I was just a solopreneur at the time, but that's when I went from probably like 30, 40 grand a year to 80, 90 grand. And so that's a pretty significant jump as a solopreneur.
Triple your money. Let's do it.
Yeah, and so I'll get to kind of why and how that ties to COVID, and then we had, some ups and downs in the economy in between 2008 and 2020, and then obviously 2020 was a mess. But during 2020, I doubled. And so my team went and from a company size, my team went from 15 to 50. And what the common denominator is all the things we've talked about is personality and personal brand and trust. So when people need your service, especially in a downturn economy, they want to give their dollar to the person that they feel like is going to protect their investment and then they trust. And so they're going to see that thing in the content you put out and the ways that you act. So don't hesitate to, stake your claim and put your foot down and say, this is who I am, because that's going to attract the people that stick with you longer. So throughout the recession and these algorithm things is that the best way I can think to find long-term stability and consistency is to make whatever your business or your product or your service is and make it your own. Stop paying attention to, I never care what my competition is doing. I don't go look at industry articles. I figure out how to make SEO my own way, figure out how to make your thing your own thing. I very rarely, if ever, follow industry trends. And here's why, right? Because a lot of people are probably going to go, well, that's stupid because how do you know what's current and new and this and that? Well, the problem with that is everybody regurgitates the same crap.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
you just
Especially
get,
now.
yeah. And so you lose innovation, you lose the ability to leverage things that you may have missed otherwise because you're just focused on the spotlight that everybody else is staring at. So take the time. I'm not saying this is fast. You're going to trip over yourself. It's going to be hard to figure out what your voice is or what your unique value proposition is, but long term, it's more valuable and it's more sustainable. So largely don't pay attention to what other people are doing, I guess is what I'm saying. And don't be scared to make all these things your own.
Well, thanks for giving us your secret sauce for SEO content creation. Where can people find more of Damon Burton?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me, Lisa. You can just go to damonburton.com and on there you'll find all my social media links. And then you'll also find a free download to an SEO book that walks you through all my processes. So if you want to get super nerdy and take on SEO, there's your blueprint.
I'm going there right now. Thanks, Damon.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks for coming to WholeCEO with Lisa G. After over 20 years helping people lose weight and get fit, I'm so excited to announce that I found the missing link with my coaching. Message me if you want to learn how to look better, feel better, and go faster with a master. Lisa G at lisagfit.com.